My name is Salman, and I worked as a tour guide in the Rubi Al Khali Desert. 3 years ago, a young Emirati businessman named Abdullah hired me, along with 3 of his friends, for a real adventure far from the usual routes. They wanted to experience the desert as their ancestors had. No satellite phones except for emergencies, relying entirely on compass, map, and stars. It was the second day of the trip when I noticed it for the first time. We were driving between massive dunes that looked like flowing golden mountains, and the wind had erased our old tire tracks the way waves erase writing on sand. I stopped to adjust the load, and when I turned to ask Abdullah something, I saw it on the crest of the dune behind us. A car. It wasn't an ordinary car. It was an old Land Rover, white in origin but now yellowed by dust. It stood silently, far enough away that we couldn't hear an engine, casting a short shadow under the midday sun. A chill ran down my spine. We hadn't seen another soul in the desert for 2 days, and there were no roads out here. I said to Abdullah, "Look there. Do you recognize it?" He stared and replied, "No. Maybe another lost vehicle?" I nodded, but my heart was pounding. How had it gotten there without us hearing it? And why was it just standing there watching? I decided to ignore it. Maybe a heat mirage, or one of the desert phantoms the elders warn about. But it stayed with us. Every time we looked back, it was there. It never came closer, never fell farther behind, always on the last dune behind us like a stray dog following a scent. We sped up. It kept the same distance. We stopped. It stopped too. Once, Abdullah tried using his telephoto camera to see the driver, but the windshield reflected the blinding white glare of the sun, like 2 blind eyes. The most skeptical of the group, Muhammad, laughed. "Maybe they're shy tourists, Salman. Let's go ask if they need help." I refused outright. Something was wrong. I couldn't explain it, but my desert-honed instincts were screaming that this was a terrible mistake. As evening approached, I decided to change direction completely, heading toward a rocky area where we could hide and observe. I did. After half an hour of winding through dry wadis, the white car finally disappeared. I exhaled in relief. Muhammad laughed. "See? Your imagination. Just lost tourists who chickened out." We set up camp in a sheltered spot between 2 large rocks. We lit a fire, drank tea, and the fear slowly faded with the warmth of the flames and friendly conversation. Still, I stayed awake, reheating my coffee again and again, staring into the darkness beyond the circle of firelight. Near midnight, I heard it. It wasn't an engine. It was the sound of brakes. A sharp, sudden screech, as if a car had stopped abruptly just meters from our camp in the pitch-black darkness. We all jumped. Abdullah grabbed his hunting rifle while Muhammad picked up a powerful flashlight and aimed it toward the sound. There was nothing, just sand and rocks under the beam. Muhammad said, his voice trembling now. "An animal, a rock falling." I said, knowing it wasn't true. "Maybe." Then came the next sound. Knocking on metal. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. The sound came from the other side of the large rock where we had parked our vehicle. We ran like madmen. Our SUV was exactly where we'd left it. But on the driver's door, clearly visible under the starlight, was a handprint. Not a normal human hand. The fingers were unnaturally long, the palm wide, smeared with what looked like wet sand or mud, as if something had stood there, placed one hand on the door, and knocked with the other. That's all I remember clearly. What followed was a blur of terror. I shouted, "Listen to me, get in the car now. Leave everything." We wore only what we had on. We jumped inside. I slammed the engine to life and drove into the darkness without headlights, relying on memory of the land and the desperate courage that comes with panic. I drove for hours until dawn broke. We didn't stop. We didn't look back. We were shaking like leaves. When we reached the first village, we stopped at a gas station. Abdullah stepped out, pale, to buy water. He came back barely able to stand. "Salman," the man at the station, asked about our trip. Then he said something strange. "What did he say?" Abdullah whispered. He said, "Thank God you made it safely. Sometimes the desert doesn't want to be left alone. Sometimes it sends one of its old guardians to follow those who enter its kingdom, and to knock on their door at night to remind them they are guests, and that guests must leave before the moon disappears. I looked at Abdullah, then at our car. In the morning sunlight, the sandy handprint on the driver's door was still there, dry now, crusted like a scar. I never returned to that part of the desert, but sometimes, in my dreams, I still see that silent white car on the dune, and hear those 3 slow knocks coming from the darkness, asking us to leave, or perhaps asking permission to come in. I was part of a foreign geological research team working in the Great Nafud Desert. Our mission was to study sand formations. The trip was routine until the team leader, Dr. Philip, decided to investigate a strange depression spotted by satellite imagery, something like an unexplained crater. When we arrived, we found it wasn't a meteor crater, but a shockingly deep pit. Its diameter was no more than 3 meters, yet its depth was impossible to see. Its edges were unnaturally smooth, as if drilled by a giant auger. Dr. Philip decided to descend. We secured him with a strong rope, gave him a powerful flashlight and a radio, and began lowering him slowly. At first, he spoke calmly over the radio. The layers are clear, sand mixed with gravel. Fascinating. Then suddenly, silence. We called out, "Dr. Philip, everything okay?" His voice came back muffled, tinged with awe. "There are carvings on the walls, not natural." "What kind of carvings?" He paused. "I don't know. Symbols and shapes of people, but distorted, as if they're dancing or suffering." "Lower me further." We did. After a few minutes, he whispered, "My God, this isn't a well, it's a door." Then he screamed, choked with terror, "Pull me up! Pull me up now! It's open! It's open!" And the transmission cut off. We hauled the rope with all our strength. It felt impossibly heavy, like dragging a corpse. When he emerged, his face was waxy pale, eyes wide open, staring at the sky without seeing. The safety rope was still tied around his waist, but in his hand he was holding something. It wasn't a rock or an artifact. It was a long, twisted bone, not human, not from any known animal. Carved deeply into it were the same strange symbols he had described. We carried him to camp in shock. We placed the object in the supply tent. That night, the sounds began. At first we thought it was the wind whistling through rocks, but it was rhythmic. Voices. Multiple whispers overlapping, speaking in an unknown language coming from the direction of the pit. The sound was low but invasive. One assistant, Carlos, complained of a splitting headache. Another, Yasser, a Saudi guide, began reciting verses from the Quran aloud, terror clear in his eyes. Then suddenly, Dr. Philip stopped breathing in his sleep. Carlos performed CPR. After agonizing minutes, his pulse returned. But when he opened his eyes, they were no longer Dr. Philip's eyes. They stared with a strange defiance, and his mouth began to move, producing the same whispering voice we had heard outside, now inside our tent. Yasser whispered, shaking, "That's not him. Something else is inside." We fled to our vehicles. From there, we saw the shadows, tall, thin shadows moving around our tents, crawling over the sand without a clear source. They weren't human. They looked like long, twisted sticks or bones. I thought of the bone doctor Philip had brought up. I jumped from the vehicle and ran back toward the supply tent despite my colleagues' screams. I grabbed the cursed bone. It was unnaturally cold, as if it were draining heat from my hand. I ran out and saw the shadows turning toward me. I ran to the pit, reached the edge, threw the bone into the pitch-black darkness. I never heard it hit the bottom. The whispers stopped instantly. The shadows vanished like smoke. We rushed back to the tent. Dr. Philip was breathing calmly, as if nothing had happened. When he woke in the morning, he remembered nothing, only the carvings, a cold updraft of air, and then waking with us. We reported the pit to the authorities and requested it be sealed. I don't know if they ever did. But I know this. On very quiet nights, in isolated places, I sometimes hear a distant whisper in the wind, and I remember what Dr. Phillips said before we left the site forever, staring into nothingness. The door is still open. We're the ones who closed our eyes. Sometimes I wonder, if the door is open, what climbed out when we threw its key, that bone, back inside? And is it still roaming our vast desert, searching for those who opened its way into our world? It was a bad idea from the start, going on a solo camping trip to Adana after losing my job and my wife. I wanted isolation. I wanted to challenge myself. I took my car, 10 days of supplies, my tent, and left. On the third day, I got lost. The GPS failed, and a sudden gust of wind tore my paper map away. I searched for hours until night fell, then decided to camp near a large dune that seemed to shelter a flat area. There I found something strange, an old pocket watch, the kind with a cover lying on the sand, gleaming as if someone had just dropped it. No sand covered it. I opened it. It was ticking. The time read 3:33 a.m. I checked my digital watch, 7:47 p.m. I took it as a curiosity and put it in my pocket. At midnight, I woke to the sound of the watch ticking. It came from my pocket. Tick. Tock. Loud, unnaturally amplified in the desert silence. I took it out. The hands now pointed exactly to midnight. I tried to stop it. No button. Tried to open it. The cover was locked tight. I decided to throw it away. I stepped out of the tent, spun around, and hurled it into the darkness. I heard a soft thud in the sand. Relieved, I went back to sleep. Minutes later, the ticking returned. Tick. Tock, this time, from inside the tent. On my pillow, the watch lay open. The time now read 3:33 p.m., and I knew that was impossible. I stepped out again, panicked. Under the moonlight, the sand around my tent was moving. Not wind, waves. Then shapes formed. Human-like shapes standing, incomplete, forming and collapsing as if people of sand were trying and failing to exist. Then I heard sounds. Murmurs, muffled screams, groans, from everywhere and nowhere, and I realized the sounds were synchronized with the ticking. Each tick was a whisper, each tock an agonized moan. I ran to my car to escape. The engine wouldn't start. The battery was dead, as if it were years old. I ran back to the tent, and there was the watch on the ground, ticking faster. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sand figures moved faster. A face surfaced on the nearby dune, a mouth open in silent scream, then collapsed. I looked at the watch. The hands were spinning wildly behind the glass. Was it pulling me backward in time? Pushing me forward? I didn't know. But the figures were closer now, not walking, but appearing nearer each time. I ran, left everything. I kept the watch because it clung to me. Or because fear of throwing it away again was worse. Its ticking matched my frantic heartbeat. I tripped and fell. The watch stopped. The time, 3:33 a.m. again. Then I heard a clear voice like the last breath of a dying man. Return it. One of the sand figures stood just steps away, more complete than the others, pointing a crumbling sandy finger at the watch. I understood. Not everyone who enters the desert gets lost in space. Some are lost in time, and this watch was someone's compass. Or their grave. With what little strength I had left, I dug a small hole in the sand at the figure's feet. I placed the watch inside and covered it. Then I sat beside it, exhausted, waiting for my fate. The ticking stopped. I slept from exhaustion. Sunrise woke me. My car stood 100 meters away. My tent was pitched. Everything was normal. The engine started like new. 2 hours later, I reached the main road. But two things remained. First, my wristwatch still runs 7 hours slow. No matter how I adjust it, it returns. Second, in my pocket, I found a handful of extremely fine, almost white sand, like sand from an hourglass. I keep it in a small vial. Sometimes, when I look at it, I think I never escaped. Maybe I'm still there, sitting beside that small pit, and everything I'm living now is just the time the watch granted me before its sand runs out, and I return to that endless desert night where the lost search forever for their lost time.